Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story, everyone. Monday morning in New York had that characteristic smell of freshly brewed coffee mixed with the steam rising from the subway grates. The sky was overcast, heavy with gray clouds threatening to pour down on the city at any moment. Elena Marquez felt every beat of her heart echoing in her ears as the taxi dropped her off 2 blocks from the imposing Apex Dynamics building. Her hands were sweating inside her dark red leather purse, gripping and releasing her printed resume as if that repetitive gesture could calm the whirlwind of anxiety taking over her chest. She was 27, a software engineering graduate from MIT, but the last 18 months had been a brutal sequence of rejections and interviews that led nowhere. Apex was different. It was the company everyone wanted, the one that transformed careers, the one that opened doors to the impossible, and Elena was minutes away from entering that world. Or being rejected once again. Her phone buzzed in the pocket of the charcoal coat she wore over her discreet navy dress. It was Sophie, her best friend since college. Relax. Be amazing. They're going to love you. Elena smiled, but the lump in her throat wouldn't go away. She typed a quick response. I'm dying of fear. The answer came instantly. I sent someone to pick you up. It'll bring you luck. Trust me. Before Elena could respond, asking what the hell Sophie was talking about. A black car, elegant, silent, almost intimidating, stopped right next to her. The rear window rolled down slowly, revealing a man with penetrating eyes in shades of stormy blue that seemed to read every thought passing through her mind. Elena Marquez. His voice was deep, controlled, but carried a softness that contrasted with the rigidity of the urban scenery around them. She blinked, confused. Yes. Who are you? He smiled a small smile, almost shy, but one that lit up his entire face. Sophie asked me to come pick you up. I'm Liam. Get in, please. It's going to rain any second. Elena hesitated. She looked at the Apex building, which was just a block away, then back at the man watching her with an almost disconcerting patience. There was something about him that made her want to trust him, even without understanding exactly why. Okay. She got into the car, feeling the soft leather of the seat beneath her legs, the subtle smell of sandalwood, and something citrusy, maybe bergamot. The space was impeccable. Silent, as if the chaos of New York couldn't reach them in there. Liam drove in silence for a few seconds, but Elena felt the weight of his gaze through the rearview mirror. Every time their eyes met, it was as if an electric current passed through the air between them. Nervous? He asked, breaking the silence. Very. Elena saw no reason to lie. It's Apex. Everyone wants to work there. And you? Why do you want to? The question caught her off guard. It wasn't the kind of thing a driver would normally ask. But there was something in his tone genuine, curious, that made her answer honestly. Because I want to be part of something bigger than myself. I want to create technology that changes lives, that makes a difference. She paused, biting her lower lip. And because I need to prove to myself that I'm good enough. Liam was silent for a moment. And when he spoke, his voice was lower, almost intimate. You're already good enough, Elena. Sometimes we just need someone to truly see us. Her eyes stung. They weren't tears, not yet. But those words touched something deep inside her, a place she'd kept locked away for a long time. The car stopped in front of the glass and steel building that seemed to touch the clouds. The rain began to fall light at first, then heavier, creating a translucent veil between them and the world outside. Liam got out first, opening the door for her with a black umbrella already open. The proximity was impossible to ignore. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with broad shoulders under a dark charcoal sweater that molded to his body in an almost disrespectful way. His dark hair had a few rebel strands falling over his forehead, and Elena had to resist the absurd impulse to brush them away with her fingers. Ready? He asked, extending his free hand. She took it. His palm was warm, firm, and the simple touch made her stomach flip in a way that had nothing to do with interview nerves. They climbed the steps together under the shared umbrella. The rain was falling harder now, and the sound of it against the fabric created a bubble of intimacy around them both. Elena felt the warmth of his body next to hers, his breathing synchronized with hers. At the glass revolving door, Liam stopped and turned to her. The rain was running down the umbrella, and they were so close that Elena could see the small silver flecks in his eyes. Could smell his cologne, something woody, masculine, addictive. You're going to kill it in there, he said, his voice low, husky. Just be yourself. That's all they need. Elena didn't know if it was the intensity of his gaze, the way his fingers still held hers, or simply the pure adrenaline running through her veins. But when she took the first step toward the door, her foot slipped on the wet step. Everything happened in slow motion. She started to fall backward, her heart racing, but before she could even scream, Liam's arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her against his chest with surprising strength. The umbrella fell, forgotten, and the rain immediately enveloped them. Their faces were inches apart. His breath was warm against her cheek. His hand still held her waist firm, protective, but with a gentleness that made Elena's heart pound painfully against her ribs. She looked into his eyes, those stormy blue eyes that seemed to hold too many secrets, and something inside her simply gave way. Elena tilted her face, closed her eyes, and pressed her lips against his. The kiss was soft at first, almost hesitant, but when Liam responded, pulling her even closer, everything changed. His mouth moved against hers with a contained urgency, as if he'd been holding something back for a long time, and had finally been given permission to let go. The rain fell on them, soaking their hair, their clothes, but none of it mattered. His hands moved up her back, one of them getting lost in her wet hair, while his mouth explored hers with a hunger that took all the air from Elena's lungs. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless, drenched, and yet unable to step away. "Sorry," Elena whispered, her voice trembling but unable to take a step back. Liam held her face between his hands, his thumbs caressing her wet cheeks. "Don't apologize." His voice was hoarse, loaded with something she couldn't name. "Never apologize for that." Their eyes met once more, and Elena saw something there that both scared and attracted her desire. Surprise, and maybe, just maybe, the beginning of something neither of them was prepared to face. Liam took a step back, picking up the fallen umbrella and opening it again over them both. His smile was small, but genuine. "Now go. They're waiting for you." Elena nodded, still dazed, still tasting him on her lips. She entered the building without looking back. But she felt his gaze glued to her, burning through her wet clothes, through her skin, straight to her heart. Inside the mirrored elevator, she touched her own lips and closed her eyes. What had she just done? Kissed a stranger, her best friend's driver, minutes before the most important interview of her life. But when she opened her eyes and saw her own reflection, she also saw the flush on her cheeks, the brightness in her eyes, and for the first time in months, Elena didn't feel nervous. She felt alive. Outside, standing in the rain, Liam Harrington touched his own lips and smiled. He looked up at the glass windows of the building that was his, all his, and whispered to no one but himself, "God help me." Because Liam knew something Elena didn't know yet, something that would change everything. He wasn't just a driver, he was the CEO of Apex Dynamics, and the woman he had just kissed was about to become his new employee. And he had no idea how he was going to tell her the truth. Elena fixed her still damp hair from the rain as the elevator silently climbed through the floors of Apex Dynamics. The full-length mirror reflected a woman she barely recognized, flushed cheeks, slightly swollen lips, eyes too bright for someone about to face the most important interview of her life. She took a deep breath, trying to push away the feeling of Liam's lips against hers, the warmth of his hands on her waist, the way he had looked at her as if he could see through all the masks she wore. "Focus, Elena," she whispered to herself. "You can't let a kiss with a stranger ruin this." But even as she said the words, her heart was beating erratically, and she knew it hadn't been just a kiss. It had been something much more dangerous. The elevator stopped on the 15th floor with a soft sound. The doors opened, revealing a wide corridor with glass walls offering a panoramic view of Manhattan. The decor was minimalist, clean lines, shades of gray and white, with touches of blue through strategically positioned plants. Everything there breathed sophistication and quiet power. A woman with auburn hair pulled back in an impeccable bun approached with a professional smile. She wore a navy blue suit that seemed to have been designed specifically for her. Elena Marquez. Her voice was pleasant, efficient. "I'm Vanessa, Human Resources Assistant. Welcome to Apex." "Thank you." Elena shook the extended hand. Trying to ignore the fact that her clothes were still slightly damp, Vanessa guided her through a glass corridor where Elena could see dozens of people working in open offices, some in front of computers with multiple screens, others in meeting rooms with walls filled with equations and diagrams. There was a palpable energy in the air, a sense that important things were happening in every corner of that place. "Apex has a unique culture," Vanessa explained as they walked. "We value innovation, but also authenticity. We want people who aren't afraid to challenge the status quo." Elena nodded, absorbing every word, every detail. She had studied everything about the company, how it had started 8 years ago in a garage, how it had grown exponentially, becoming a leader in artificial intelligence and cybersecurity solutions, but being there, inside that world, was completely different from reading about it. You'll be talking with 3 people today, Vanessa continued. First, our Chief Technology Officer, Rachel Kim. Then the development team leader, Julian Reyes. And lastly, a brief conversation with someone from upper management. There was something in Vanessa's pause that made Elena frown, but before she could ask, they had already arrived at a meeting room with frosted glass walls. The next 2 hours were intense. Rachel Kim was brilliant and direct, asking technical questions that challenged every aspect of Elena's knowledge of programming, algorithms, and systems architecture. Julian Reyes was more relaxed, interested in how Elena thought, how she solved problems, how she worked in a team. Elena answered everything with a confidence she didn't know she possessed. Maybe it was the adrenaline still running through her veins. Maybe it was the persistent taste of that kiss that made her feel more alive than she had felt in years. Or maybe, just maybe, she was finally ready to be truly seen. When Julian left the room with a firm handshake and a, "You were exceptional," Elena allowed herself to breathe. She had done well. She knew it. She could feel it. Vanessa appeared again. But this time there was something different in her expression, a slight smile that seemed to hold a secret. "There's one more person who wants to talk to you," she said. "It's unusual. Normally, he doesn't participate in initial interviews, but he specifically asked to meet you." Elena's stomach flipped. "He? Our CEO." The world seemed to tilt slightly. Elena felt the room spin for a second before she regained her composure. The CEO, Liam Harrington. She had read about him, 33 years old, Stanford graduate, visionary, reserved to the point of being almost a mystery. There were few photos of him publicly available. He avoided spotlights, interviews, social events. "He rarely does this," Vanessa continued, misinterpreting Elena's silence. "Consider it a good sign." Elena nodded, her mouth dry. She followed Vanessa down another corridor, this one even quieter, until they reached a private elevator. Vanessa typed in a code, and the doors opened, revealing an interior lined with dark wood and discreet mirrors. "Top floor," Vanessa said, pressing the button. "Good luck." The doors closed, and Elena was alone with her accelerated breathing and the reflection of a woman desperately trying not to panic. The elevator climbed silently. When the doors opened, Elena found herself in a space completely different from the rest of the building. Here, everything was darker, more intimate fine wood, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, an electric fireplace emitting a soft glow. The enormous windows offered a breathtaking view of the entire city, but what really stole her attention was the man standing by the window, his back to her. He was tall, broad shoulders under a perfectly tailored dark charcoal blazer. Dark hair with a few rebel strands. Elena's heart stopped. No, it couldn't be. The man turned slowly, and when his eyes, those impossible stormy blue eyes, met hers, Elena felt the floor disappear beneath her feet. Liam, the driver, the man she had kissed, the man whose taste was still on her lips. He was the CEO of Apex Dynamics. Miss Marquez. His voice was formal, controlled, but there was a tension in it that hadn't existed before. "Thank you for coming." Elena couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but stare at him while her brain tried to process the impossible. He lied. He pretended to be someone else, and she had kissed the CEO of the company where she wanted to work. "Please have a seat." Liam gestured to a leather chair in front of his desk, an imposing solid wood desk, covered by only a laptop and a picture frame turned toward him. Elena moved like a robot, her legs obeying even as her mind screamed at her to run. She sat down, her hands clasped in her lap, trying to control the trembling that threatened to take over her entire body. Liam walked to his chair but didn't sit immediately. Instead, he stood, hands in his pockets, looking at her with an expression she couldn't decipher. "You were exceptional in the interviews," he finally said. "Rachel and Julian were impressed. They said you're exactly the kind of mind we're looking for here." Elena found her voice, but it came out shaky. You lied to me." Liam closed his eyes for a brief moment. When he opened them again, there was something in them that looked like pain. "I didn't technically lie," he said, and Elena almost laughed at the audacity. "I just didn't tell the whole truth. You pretended to be a driver. I drove you here. That wasn't a lie. That's semantics. And you know it." Anger began to replace the shock. "Why did you do it?" Liam finally sat down, But instead of staying behind the desk, putting a barrier between them, he pulled a chair and sat next to her too close, too intimate. "Sophie asked me for a favor," he said, his voice low. "Said her best friend was nervous about the interview and asked if I could send a car. I was going to do that, send my driver. But then—" He paused, running a hand through his hair in that gesture. Elena was already beginning to recognize as a sign of frustration. "Then I read your resume, read your recommendation letters, saw your grades, your projects, everything. And something about you intrigued me. So you decided to deceive me. I decided to meet you without all the pressure that comes with my title." His eyes fixed on hers, intense, honest. "Do you have any idea how people change when they find out who I am? How they become fake versions of themselves, trying to impress me, please me, use me?" Elena wanted to argue, but part of her understood, part of her knew that if she had gotten into that car knowing it was the CEO of Apex sitting behind the wheel, she never would have been honest, never would have said those things about wanting to prove her worth, never would have been herself, and she definitely never would have kissed him. As if reading her thoughts, Liam leaned slightly forward. "About the kiss, it was a mistake." Elena cut in too quickly, too defensively. "Was it?" His question was soft but loaded with meaning. The silence between them was dense, electric. Elena could feel the heat emanating from his body, could see the small silver flecks in his eyes that she had noticed before when she was in his arms, soaked with rain, lost in a moment of pure madness. "Did you offer me the job?" she asked, changing the subject because she couldn't handle the intensity of that gaze. "Not officially yet." Liam leaned back, creating a space between them that somehow made Elena miss the proximity. "But yes, the job is yours if you want it, and the kiss has nothing to do with it." His jaw tightened. "You earned this job with your talent, your intelligence, your passion. The kiss." He paused, and for the first time Elena saw vulnerability in his face. The kiss was something that should never have happened. But it did, and I can't pretend it didn't mean anything. Elena's heart was pounding so loud she was sure he could hear it. "So, what happens now?" she whispered. Liam stood up, creating distance, assuming once again that CEO posture controlled, professional, untouchable. "Now you decide if you want to work here. If you do, we'll keep everything strictly professional. What happened down there stays between us. No one else needs to know." Elena watched him the way his shoulders were tense, how his hands were closed in loose fists at his sides. He was controlling himself, maintaining distance, doing the right thing, and somehow that made her want to break that distance even more. "I accept the job," she said, standing up as well. "And I agree. Total professionalism." Liam nodded, but there was something in his eyes, an unspoken promise, a contained desire that said professionalism would be much harder than either of them was admitting. From the height of his office, Liam Harrington watched Elena Marquez leave, and something inside him changed permanently. He had lied to her, but the biggest lie of all was the one he was telling himself now that he could keep his distance from her. Because the truth was that from the moment her lips had touched his, Liam Harrington was completely, irrevocably lost. Elena's first week at Apex passed in a whirlwind of new faces, complex systems, and a learning curve that would have been intimidating if she weren't determined to prove to herself and to everyone there that she deserved that place. Her office was an open workstation on the 13th floor, surrounded by other developers who barely lifted their eyes from their screens for hours. The energy was intense, focused exactly the kind of environment Elena had always dreamed of working in. But no matter how hard she tried to concentrate on the lines of code dancing on her screen, no matter how lost she got in algorithms and debugging, there was a part of her mind that remained constantly alert, constantly waiting for him. Liam Harrington hadn't appeared since that interview. No emails, no messages, no visits to her floor. It was as if he had simply vanished, or more likely, was keeping the distance they had both agreed was necessary. Elena should have been relieved, should have been grateful for the normality, for the chance to build her career without complications. But instead she found herself looking at the elevator every time the doors opened, holding her breath, feeling a pang of disappointment each time it wasn't him. It was pathetic. She knew it was dangerous, but she couldn't stop. It was Friday, almost noon, when everything changed. Elena was immersed in a particularly complicated database optimization problem, her fingers flying over the keyboard, when a familiar voice but somehow different sounded behind her. "Sorry to interrupt. You're new here, right?" Elena turned in her chair and nearly dropped her coffee. Liam was there, but it wasn't the CEO Liam in an impeccable suit and authoritative posture. This Liam wore a simple black t-shirt with the discreet Apex logo, dark jeans, and sneakers. His hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd run his hands through it several times. And in his eyes, those stormy blue eyes that haunted her at night, there was an amused, almost mischievous glint. Yes, first week, she managed to say, her heart already racing. I figured, I hadn't seen you around yet. He extended his hand with an easy, casual smile. I'm Liam. I'm on the 11th floor. But I always end up coming up to solve problems. Liam. He had used his real name, this time no more lies about being just an IT guy. Yet he was still pretending, still playing the part of someone lower in the hierarchy. Elena shook his hand, that hand that had held her waist, that had caressed her face and felt the same electric current from before run through her entire body. Elena, she said, deciding to play along for now. Software development. Cool. Liam pulled a chair from an empty workstation and sat next to her, too close to be just professional. What are you working on? Elena should have confronted him, should have asked what the hell he was doing, why he was still lying. But there was something about the way he looked at her, as if she were the only person in the entire world that made her want to prolong it. That moment, that game, query optimization, she answered, turning the screen so he could see. The system is taking too long to process large volumes of data. I'm trying to find bottlenecks. Liam leaned in, studying the code with a concentration that made Elena realize he wasn't just pretending. He really understood. Of course he did. He had built half of this company. Here, he pointed to a specific line. This join is killing your performance. If you restructure the query like this, his fingers brushed hers as he reached for the keyboard, and Elena had to fight the urge to intertwine their hands. They worked together for the next 40 minutes, their heads tilted over the screen, their bodies so close that Elena could feel his warmth, could catch that woody scent that reminded her of the rain, the kiss, everything she was trying to forget. You're really good at this, she said when they finally solved the problem. Liam laughed, a genuine warm laugh that completely transformed his face. I manage. They continued like that lunch in the cafeteria every day, deeper conversations, accidental touches that became more frequent, more intentional. The tension between them grew daily, a living thing that neither could ignore. Weeks turned into months. They hadn't kissed again, hadn't crossed that final line, but every look, every brush of fingers, every shared secret felt like foreplay to something inevitable. One rainy Tuesday, almost 3 weeks after he first appeared as just Liam from the 11th floor, he showed up with 2 coffees, one of them exactly how Elena liked it. Oat milk latte with an extra shot of espresso. How did you know? She asked, surprised. He smiled. I pay attention. Elena took the coffee, and their fingers touched around the warm cup. Neither of them moved. The touch extended, deepened, transformed into something more than accidental. Liam, she whispered, and his real name sounded like a confession. Yes, his voice was husky. Who are you really? The question hung between them. Liam could have lied again, could have continued the game, but instead he simply held her hand completely, openly, and said, someone who can't stop thinking about you, someone who knows this is wrong but who can't stay away. Elena's heart was beating so hard it hurt. This is crazy. I know it could end badly. It probably will. Then why? Liam raised his free hand and, with a gentleness that contrasted with the intensity in his eyes, tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered on her skin, tracing the line of her jaw. Because for the first time in years, he whispered, I feel real when I'm with you. I'm not a title or a bank account. I'm just me. Elena closed her eyes, feeling his touch, the raw truth in his words. She knew she was falling, knew she was entering dangerous territory. But when she opened her eyes and saw the way he looked at her as if she were precious, important, to seen she couldn't bring herself to care. I can't stop thinking about you either, she admitted. The smile that lit up his face was devastating. That night, as Elena lay in her bed staring at the ceiling of her small Brooklyn apartment, she knew she had crossed a line. She was falling in love with a man who still hid parts of himself, and the worst part was that she didn't want him to stop because when she was with Liam, Elena felt completely, utterly alive. Autumn arrived in New York with that melancholic beauty that transformed the city into a painting of golden and red tones. Elena had completely settled into Apex. Her code was praised, her ideas were heard, and she finally felt like she belonged somewhere. But what really made her days shine wasn't the work, it was him. Liam had become part of her routine in a way that should have scared her, but instead filled her with quiet joy. They still had lunch together every day. Coffee in the mornings, touches that had become bolder, his hand on the small of her back, her fingers straightening his collar, the way he played with a strand of her hair during conversations. They hadn't kissed again, but the tension between them grew every day, an unfulfilled promise that hung in the air every time they looked at each other. It was a sunny Wednesday when everything changed again. Elena was in the cafeteria getting her lunch when she heard a male voice behind her. "You must be the famous Elena Marquez." She turned and found a tall man with blonde hair and bright green eyes smiling at her with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. "Famous?" she asked, confused. "Rachel can't stop talking about you. Says you're the best hire of the year." He extended his hand. "I'm Victor. Victor Lang, sales business side of the house." Elena laughed, shaking his hand. "Nice to meet you, Victor. Want to join us?" He gestured to his table, where 3 other men were talking animatedly. It was an innocent invitation. Friendly, Elena was about to accept when she felt a change in air pressure. A presence behind her. "She already has company." Liam's voice, low, controlled, but with a sharp edge Elena had never heard before, made her heart race. She turned and found him there with 2 plates of food in his hands and an expression that could freeze hell itself. "Liam," Victor said, and there was casual disrespect in his tone that made Liam's eyes narrow. "I didn't know you, and the new developer were close. We have lunch together," Liam said. His voice still controlled, but Elena could see the tension in his shoulders, in the way his jaw tightened. Every day, the air between the 2 men grew thick. Victor smiled a smile that didn't reach his eyes and took a step back. "Of course, don't want to interrupt." He looked at Elena. "But if you change your mind, my table is always open." When Victor walked away, Elena turned to Liam and saw something in his eyes that made her shiver. It wasn't anger. It was something more primal, more visceral. Possessiveness. "Let's go," he said, his tone shorter than usual. Elena followed him to their usual table. But when they sat down, the silence between them was different, heavy, loaded. "Are you okay?" she asked, lightly touching his hand on the table. Liam looked at her hand on his, and something in his expression softened. He turned his palm up, intertwining their fingers. "Sorry," he said, his voice low. "I don't have the right to. It's just that Victor has a reputation. He's good at what he does, but with women, he's not exactly respectful." "And you were protecting me?" Elena asked, an eyebrow raised. But there was warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with indignation. "I was being selfish," Liam admitted, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that took Elena's breath away. "I don't like the way he looked at you like you were a conquest. And how do you look at me?" Liam squeezed her hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles on the sensitive skin of her wrist. "Like you're the most important thing in this room, in this building, in this entire city." Elena's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "Liam, I know I don't have the right," he continued, his voice low, urgent. "I know this is complicated and wrong in so many ways, but every time I see another man looking at you, every time someone makes you smile in a way I didn't, God, I feel like something inside me is being torn out." Elena couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All that existed was the way he looked at her, how he held her hand, as if she were the only thing keeping him from falling apart. "You're jealous," she whispered. "And it wasn't a question." "I am," he admitted without hesitation. "And I know it's irrational and possessive, and probably scary, but I can't help it. You distract me, Elena. Your smile, your laugh, the way you bite your lower lip when you're concentrating, everything about you consumes me." His words were liquid fire running through her veins. Elena knew she should be careful, knew she was playing with something dangerous. But when she looked into his eyes and saw all that raw emotion, all that vulnerability, she couldn't hold back. "Then don't let anyone else make me smile," she whispered. "Do it yourself." The transformation in his face was instant. The tension dissolved, replaced by something warmer, more intimate. He brought her hand to his lips and kissed her fingers, a soft, reverent touch that set Elena's entire body on fire. "Elena Marquez," he murmured against her skin, "do you have any idea what you're doing to me?" "Probably the same thing you're doing to me," she replied, her voice trembling. From that day on, something changed between them. The dynamic intensified, deepened, became something neither of them could deny anymore. Liam started appearing at random moments passing by her floor during meetings, his eyes finding hers through the glass, a small smile curving his lips. When she worked late, he appeared with food, insisting she needed to eat, sitting next to her while their knees touched under the table, The touches became more constant, more necessary. One afternoon, Elena was struggling with a particularly frustrating bug when she felt hands on her shoulders. She didn't need to turn around to know who it was. She would recognize his touch anywhere. "You're tense," Liam murmured, his thumbs gently pressing the knots in her shoulders. Elena closed her eyes, letting herself melt under his touch. "This code is killing me. Let me see." He leaned over her, his chest lightly pressing against her back, his face next to hers as he studied the screen. Elena could feel his warmth, his scent woody, masculine, addictive. "Here," he pointed, his voice husky near her ear. "You're calling the wrong function." Elena turned slightly, and suddenly their faces were inches apart. She could see every detail, the small lines around his eyes, the shadow of stubble on his jaw, the way his lips parted slightly when he realized the proximity. The world disappeared. The office, the people, everything dissolved until only the two of them existed, trapped in that suspended moment where everything seemed possible. "Elena," he whispered, and her name on his lips was a prayer, a confession, a plea. She leaned in, just an inch, maybe two. "Elena, I need you on the 11th floor now." Someone's voice, a colleague from IT, broke the moment. Liam pulled away so quickly that Elena felt the cold of his absence like a physical shock. "Coming," he responded, his voice surprisingly firm, considering how his hands were shaking. He looked at Elena one last time, and in that look was a promise. This isn't over, just postponed. That night, late, when most employees had left, Elena was finishing a report when her phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. "Meet me on the terrace, 10th floor, now, 2L. Her heart raced. She shouldn't go. She knew that, but her feet were already moving, taking her to the elevator, up to the 10th floor where the employee-exclusive terrace offered a stunning view of the illuminated city. Liam was there, leaning against the railing, the wind messing up his hair. When he heard her approach, he turned, and the expression on his face was of someone who had fought an internal battle and lost. "I shouldn't have called you here," he said, but didn't move to leave. "But you did," Elena replied, walking until she stood beside him. "I tried to stay away, tried to be professional, tried to do the right thing." His voice was loaded with frustration. "But then I see you, and all of it falls apart." Elena looked at the illuminated city below them, then back at him, then stopped trying. Liam stared at her, shocked. "What?" "Stop trying to stay away. Stop pretending there's nothing between us." She turned completely toward him, her heart pounding but her voice steady. "Because I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of fighting against something that grows stronger every day." "Elena." There was warning in his voice. "Danger. I know it's complicated. I know it could end badly. I know you still have secrets." She took a step toward him. "But I also know that when I'm with you, I feel more alive than I've ever felt, and I know you feel the same." Liam closed his eyes as if in pain. When he opened them again, there was something in them that made Elena's world tilt. "If we cross this line," he said, his voice rough, "there's no going back. I know. You might regret it. Maybe." Elena took another step, now so close she could feel his warmth. "But I know for sure I'll regret it if I don't try." For a long moment, Liam just looked at her. Then, slowly, so slowly, it seemed painful, he raised his hand and caressed her face, his thumb tracing the curve of her cheek. "Do you have any idea how your smile distracts me?" he whispered, echoing words from weeks ago. "How a single look from you can ruin my entire day, because I can't think about anything else but you." Elena covered his hand with hers, pressing it against her cheek. "Do you have any idea what you're doing to me?" His smile was small, sad, but genuine. "Probably ruining your life. Maybe." She agreed. But what a way to ruin it. And then, under the starry New York sky with the city pulsing below them, Liam Harrington leaned in and kissed Elena Marquez. Not like that first rushed and impulsive kiss in the rain. This kiss was conscious. It was choice. It was a line being crossed with eyes wide open. And when their mouths met, when his arms pulled her against his chest, when her hands got lost in his hair, they both knew they had just changed everything forever. The kiss on the terrace had changed everything, not just between them, but within them. It was as if a dam had finally broken, releasing a current of emotions neither of them could or wanted to contain. In the days that followed, the tension between Elena and Liam transformed into something more tangible, more urgent. Every touch was loaded with promise. Every look contained unspoken invitations. It was a Friday night, and most employees had already left to enjoy the weekend. Elena was finishing some code when she felt more than heard his presence behind her. "Still here?" Liam's voice was low, intimate, making every nerve in her body awaken. She turned in her chair and found him leaning against her workstation entrance, arms crossed over his chest. He had changed from his work t-shirt to a dark charcoal dress shirt, sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms that made Elena's mouth go dry. There was something different about him today, something more intense, as if he had made a decision. "Just finishing up some things," she replied, her voice sounding huskier than intended. "I was waiting." Waiting for what? His eyes fixed on hers with an intensity that made the air disappear from Elena's lungs. "For you." 2 words, simple, but loaded with so much meaning that Elena felt her heart race. "For what?" she asked, though part of her already knew the answer. Liam approached, each step deliberate, until he stood in front of her. He extended his hand. "Come with me." Elena looked at the extended hand. She knew what it meant that if she placed her hand in his now, if she stood up and followed him, she would be taking a step she couldn't undo, a step that could complicate everything, that could destroy the career she was just beginning to build. But when her eyes met his again, and she saw all that raw emotion, desire, yes, but also something deeper, something that looked like vulnerability and hope intertwined, she knew there was no real choice. Her hand found his. The touch was electric. Liam gently pulled her up, but didn't let go of her hand. Their fingers intertwined naturally, perfectly, as if they had been made for this. "Where are we going?" Elena asked as he guided her to the private elevator she knew led to the top of the building to his office. "Do you trust me?" He pressed the button, and the doors opened. "Should I?" Liam smiled, a small, honest smile that completely transformed his face. "Probably not, but I hope you do." They entered the elevator. As soon as the doors closed, creating a private bubble, Liam pulled Elena into his arms, not to kiss her, just to hold her. His chin rested on top of her head, and Elena could hear the accelerated beating of his heart. "I've been thinking about this all day," he confessed, his voice vibrating through his chest. "About you, about us, about all the reasons why this is a bad idea." "And?" Elena asked, her hands resting on his waist. "None of them matter when I'm near you." The elevator stopped. The doors opened to the executive floor. But instead of guiding her to his office, Liam led her down a side hallway to a discreet door she had never noticed before. He typed in a code, and the door opened, revealing not an office, but an apartment. Elena's jaw dropped. The space was surprisingly cozy, despite being clearly expensive. An open-concept loft, with floor-to-ceiling windows, offering a breathtaking view of all of Manhattan. The decor was masculine but elegant shades of charcoal and navy blue. Soft leather furniture. Shelves filled with books that looked actually read. Not just decoration. "You live here?" she asked, turning to him. "Sometimes when I work late, or when." He paused, running a hand through his hair in that gesture she already knew so well. "When I don't want to go back to an empty house." There was loneliness in those words, a sadness that made Elena's heart tighten. "Liam." "Not today," he said softly. "Today I just want to be with you. No masks, no complications, just us." Elena nodded, understanding that he needed this as much as she did, maybe more. Liam led her to the open kitchen where he opened a bottle of red wine. He poured 2 glasses, handing one to her. Their fingers brushed in the process a touch that had already become a secret language between them. "I didn't do this with dishonest intentions," he said, a slight smile curving his lips. "I just didn't want our, whatever this is, to happen in an office or some hidden corner. You deserve more than that." Elena's heart melted a little more. "And what do I deserve?" Liam placed his glass on the counter and approached her, taking the glass from her hands and placing it next to his. Then, with a tenderness that contrasted with the intensity in his eyes, he held her face between his hands. "You deserve to be seen, to be valued, to be loved the right way by someone who understands how rare you are." "And are you that someone?" Elena whispered, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. "I want to be," he admitted, his voice rough with emotion. "God, I want so badly to be." Then he kissed her, and this kiss was different from all the previous ones. It was slower, deeper, more deliberate. His mouth explored hers with a reverent patience, as if he had all the time in the world and wanted to memorize every inch, every sigh, every small sound that escaped her lips. Elena's hands moved up his chest, feeling the firm muscles under his shirt until they got lost in his hair. She pulled him closer, deepening the kiss, and felt the low moan that vibrated through his chest. Liam lifted her effortlessly, sitting her on the kitchen counter, positioning himself between her legs. The proximity was intoxicating, Elena could feel every inch of him pressed against her, the heat of his body burning through their clothes. "Elena," he murmured against her lips, his breathing irregular. "If you want to stop, you need to tell me now, because if we continue—" "Don't stop," she whispered, pulling him back for another kiss. "Please don't stop." Something in him let go. The kiss became more urgent, more necessary. His hands slid down her back, pulling her even closer to the edge of the counter, eliminating any space between them. Elena wrapped her legs around his waist, and the moan that escaped him was the most erotic sound she had ever heard. "Bedroom," he managed to say between kisses. "I want to do this right." He lifted her again, and Elena wrapped her arms and legs around him as Liam carried her through the apartment. They stumbled a few times, unable to stop kissing, laughing against each other's lips when he bumped his shoulder against the door. The bedroom was as elegant as the rest of the apartment, a king-size bed with impeccable white sheets dominating the space. Liam carefully laid her on the bed, as if she were something precious and fragile. He stood beside the bed for a moment, just looking at her. And Elena saw so much in his eyes that it almost made her cry. Desire, yes, but also reverence, fear, hope. "You're so beautiful," he whispered, and it wasn't a pickup line. It was a confession torn from the depths of his soul. Elena extended her hand. "Come here." Liam climbed onto the bed, positioning himself over her, supporting his weight on his elbows so as not to crush her. For a long moment they just looked at each other, absorbing the reality of what was about to happen. Then, slowly, Liam began to unbutton her blouse. Each button was an eternity. His fingers trembled slightly, not from nervousness, Elena realized, but from restraint, as if he were holding himself back from simply tearing the fabric. When the blouse finally opened, revealing the black lace bra Elena had chosen that morning without knowing it would be seen, Liam's eyes darkened with desire. "Are you trying to kill me?" he murmured, tracing the lace with a finger, making Elena arch under the touch. "Maybe," she replied with a teasing smile. She didn't know she possessed. His shirt was next. Elena unbuttoned it with hands less steady than she would have liked, revealing a defined abdomen and a broad chest that begged to be touched. She slid her palms down his back, feeling the muscles contract under her touch, scratching lightly with her nails, in a way that drew a hoarse moan from him. The clothes disappeared gradually, each piece removed with a mixture of urgency and reverence. When they were finally skin against skin, both stopped, just feeling. "Are you sure?" Liam asked, his eyes searching hers, giving her one last chance to back out. In response, Elena pulled him into a kiss that left no room for doubt. Their tongues danced while his hands explored every curve, every valley of her body. He kissed her neck, her collarbone, slowly descending to her breasts, paying equal attention to each one, drawing sighs and moans she couldn't control. "Liam," she gasped when his mouth traced the curve of her waist, when his fingers slid lower, finding the pulsing center of her desire. "Here, with me like this. Call me Liam," he corrected gently, his eyes meeting hers. His real name, another layer of truth being revealed. "Liam," she repeated, and saw something shine in his eyes, gratitude, perhaps, or relief. He continued his exploration, learning every sensitive spot, every touch that made her arch, every movement that drew his name from her lips in a plea. When Elena felt she couldn't take any more, when every nerve was on fire and she was trembling with need, he finally positioned himself over her. "Look at me," he asked, his voice hoarse. "I want to see you." Her eyes met his, and in that moment of deep connection he entered her slowly, giving her time to adjust, to get used to the sensation of being finally, completely united. Elena closed her eyes at the intensity of the sensation, but he touched her face. "No, stay with me here." She opened her eyes again, and what she saw in his almost undid her. It wasn't just desire. It was something deeper, scarier, more real. They began to move together, finding a rhythm that was perfectly theirs, not rushed, but intense. Every movement was deliberate, loaded with emotion. His hands held hers, fingers intertwined, while their hips moved in perfect sync. "Elena," he moaned, burying his face in her neck. "God, Elena." She held him tighter, moving with him, against him, lost in the sensation of being one. The pleasure grew in waves, building until it became overwhelming, until all she could do was feel. When the orgasm hit her, it was like being undone and rebuilt simultaneously. She screamed his name, Liam, and felt him tremble over her as he found his own release. her name on his lips like a prayer. Afterward, wrapped in white sheets and the soft glow of city light filtering through the windows, Liam pulled her into his arms. Elena rested her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat gradually slow, feeling his fingers trace lazy patterns on her back. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. Kissing the top of her head, Elena lifted her face to look at him. His eyes were glistening not with sadness, but with something so big it didn't fit inside her. "I've never been better," she whispered. And it was the purest truth she had ever told. Liam smiled a genuine, vulnerable smile, completely different from all the masks he wore. And in that moment, with the city pulsing outside and an uncertain future ahead, they were just two hearts beating in unison. Friday night had transformed into Saturday morning, but neither of them had any intention of sleeping. There was something in the air between Elena and Liam, a hunger that their first encounter had only begun to satisfy, but that had somehow become more intense, more urgent. Elena was lying in Liam's arms, his fingers still tracing lazy patterns on her bare back, when she felt the change in him. The breathing that had calmed began to accelerate again. The touch that had been gentle and comforting gained a new intention. She lifted her head from his chest and found his eyes already fixed on her. There was something wild there, something that made her pulse race and her body awaken again despite the pleasurable exhaustion enveloping her. "I should let you rest," Liam murmured, but his hand said otherwise, sliding along the curve of her waist, the line of her hip, claiming her again. "I don't want to rest," Elena replied, her voice hoarse from everything they had already done but loaded with the promise of what was still to come. "I want you again." Something dark and primal passed through his eyes. "Elena." It was half warning, half plea. "Please," she whispered, and that was all he needed to hear. Liam turned her onto her back in one fluid motion, positioning himself over her again, but this time there was less restraint, less caution. His kisses were hungrier, more demanding. His mouth devoured hers while his hands rediscovered every inch of skin they had explored before, but now with a possessiveness that made Elena moan against his lips. "You're addictive," he murmured against the sensitive skin of her neck, nibbling lightly, making her arch. "I can't get enough of you." His words were liquid fire running through her veins. Elena buried her fingers in his hair, pulling him lower, guiding his mouth to where she wanted it most. Liam obeyed, his descending path punctuated by wet kisses, gentle bites, licks that made her entire body tremble. When his mouth found her center again, Elena thought she might disintegrate right there. He savored her with a dedication that bordered on worship, alternating between gentle touches that left her begging and firm movements that quickly took her to the edge of the abyss. "Liam," she gasped, her hands gripping the sheets, her head thrown back on the pillow. "God." "Liam." He raised his eyes, those stormy blue eyes that completely undid her, and what she saw in them was pure masculine power. He knew exactly what he was doing to her, knew how much she was at his mercy, and he loved it. "Come for me," he ordered, his voice rough, before resuming what he was doing with renewed intensity. Elena had no choice. The orgasm hit her like a giant wave, tearing a scream from her lips as her body arched and trembled under his mouth. He guided her through each wave, each tremor, until she collapsed back onto the mattress, breathless and completely destroyed. But Liam wasn't finished. He climbed up her body, leaving a trail of kisses on her overheated skin until his lips found hers again. Elena could taste herself on him, and it was so erotic that she felt a new wave of desire ignite inside her. "Turn over," he whispered against her lips, helping her position herself on all fours on the bed. The vulnerability of the position should have made her nervous, but the way his hands caressed her back, her hips so reverent, made her only feel desired, safe, possessed, in the best possible way. Liam positioned himself behind her, one hand steadying her hip, while the other traced the line of her spine. "You're perfect," he murmured, more to himself than to her. Then he entered her in one firm movement that drew simultaneous moans from both of them. In this position he reached places that made stars explode behind Elena's closed eyes. Each thrust was deep, possessive, marking her in ways that went far beyond the physical. "So perfect," he repeated, the rhythm increasing, becoming more urgent. "Malfamy." Elena could only moan in agreement, pushing back against him, meeting each movement, lost in the sensation of being completely connected. His hands were everywhere, on her hips, on her breasts, one of them sliding forward to find the exact spot that would make her crumble again. "I can't hold on much longer," she gasped, feeling the tension building again faster this time, more intense. "Then don't," Liam responded, his voice tight with restraint. "Give me one more. I want to feel you falling apart around me." And she did. The second orgasm was even more intense than the first, making her scream his name as her body contracted around him. Feeling her come was enough to take him too. He buried himself deep one last time, his own climax tearing a hoarse moan from his lips as his hands held her firmly against him. They collapsed on the bed, a tangle of limbs and irregular breathing. Liam immediately pulled her into his arms, as if he couldn't bear not to be touching her. "Wow," Elena managed to say when she finally regained the ability to speak. She felt Liam's laughter vibrate through his chest. "I completely agree." They stayed like that for a long time, just breathing together, their heartbeats gradually slowing down. But there was an intimacy in that silence that went beyond sex, the intimacy of two people who had allowed themselves to be completely vulnerable with each other. "I have a confession," Liam said eventually, his voice sleepy but loaded with something deeper. "Hmm?" Elena traced lazy patterns on his chest, enjoying the feeling of the muscles under her palm. "I thought about this, thought about you like this in my arms. Since that first kiss in the rain." He paused, and Elena felt the vulnerability in that silence. "But reality is 1,000 times better than anything I imagine." Elena lifted her head to look at him. His eyes were honest, open, without any of the masks he normally wore. "Liam, I know this is complicated," he continued, one hand rising to brush a strand of hair from her face. "I know there are things you don't know about me, things that, when you find out, might change how you feel." A chill ran down Elena's spine. "Then tell me." Liam closed his eyes, pain clear on his features. "Not today. Please, just give me a little more time, a few hours where I can be just me with you." There was so much fear in those words, so much vulnerability, that Elena didn't have the heart to insist. Instead, she kissed his chest right over his racing heart. "Okay, but Liam, when you're ready to tell me the truth, I'll listen, and we'll deal with it together." His arms tightened around her as if she were the only thing keeping him from falling apart. "I don't know what I did to deserve you. Maybe you didn't do anything," Elena whispered. "Maybe you just need to accept that you deserve to be loved." The word hung in the air between them, love. Neither had said it yet, but it was there, enormous and terrifying and undeniable. Liam turned her so they were face to face on the pillows, noses almost touching. "Stay with me today," he asked softly. "Tomorrow, we go back to the real world. But today, stay here. Let me make you breakfast. Let me spend the whole day getting to know you, not just your body, but everything. Your dreams, your fears. What makes you laugh at 3 in the morning?" Elena's heart overflowed. "Yes," she whispered. "I'll stay." The smile that lit up his face was the most beautiful she had ever seen. They fell asleep like that, intertwined with the first lights of morning, beginning to illuminate the Manhattan sky. And for the first time in a long time, neither dreamed of loneliness or masks or secrets. They dreamed only of each other. Saturday with Liam had been too perfect to be real. They spent the entire day in his apartment cooking together, laughing at inside jokes they were already creating, making love slowly in the soft afternoon light. Liam had been exactly who he promised to be, just a man without titles, without masks. And Elena had allowed herself to believe it could last. But Monday arrived, as it always does, relentless and full of reality. Elena was at her workstation reviewing code when Sophie called. Her best friend was excited, talking quickly about a corporate party. Apex was throwing that night, a celebration for closing a $1 billion contract with the government. "You have to go, E. It's going to be on the building's rooftop. Open bar, amazing food, and everyone important will be there." Sophie insisted. "Plus, I heard the mysterious CEO is finally going to show up. Nobody ever sees him." Elena's stomach flipped. Liam. She would have to see him in public, surrounded by people, pretending she hadn't spent the entire weekend in his arms, pretending she didn't know every inch of his skin, every sigh, every secret whispered in the dark. That evening the Apex rooftop was transformed. Fairy lights hung, creating an artificial sky of stars, elegant tables strategically scattered, a full bar on one side, and a breathtaking view of illuminated Manhattan on the other. Soft jazz music played as employees in formal attire circulated, laughing, drinking, celebrating. Elena wore a simple but elegant emerald green dress. She felt out of place amid all that ostentation until she saw familiar faces and let herself be pulled into conversations. But her heart was racing, Searching for a pair of stormy blue eyes in every corner of the rooftop, Liam didn't appear. It was almost 10 at night when the lights suddenly dimmed and a microphone screeched, capturing everyone's attention. Vanessa, the HR assistant, was on the small makeshift stage. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to celebrate this incredible achievement with us. And now, it's with great pleasure that I present someone we rarely have the honor of seeing in person, our CEO, Liam Harrington." Elena's world stopped. On the other side of the rooftop, a door opened, and he walked in. But this wasn't the Liam who had held her hand in his kitchen, who had made love to her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. This was someone completely different. Liam Harrington, CEO of Apex Dynamics, in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. Hair perfectly combed back. Posture upright. Authoritative. His eyes, those eyes that had looked at her with so much desire and vulnerability, were now cold, distant, professional. He climbed onto the stage, took the microphone, and when he spoke, even his voice was different, more controlled, more formal. "Good evening. Thank you all for the hard work that made this contract possible. You are the backbone of Apex, and I hope you know how valued each of you is." Elena could barely breathe. Around her, employees whispered, impressed to finally see the mythical boss. "He's so young and handsome. They say he's a billionaire." Billionaire with a B. Each word was a dagger. Billionaire CEO. Liam Harrington, not the man who had lunch with her every day, not the man who had whispered her name like a prayer while buried inside her. It had all been a lie. Liam's speech ended with polite applause. He stepped down from the stage, immediately surrounded by executives wanting his attention, and that's when his eyes finally swept across the crowd and found hers. Elena saw the instant recognition, saw how his entire body stiffened, saw fear, guilt, regret pass through those eyes, before he quickly looked away, turning his attention back to the man beside him. He ignored her completely, as if she were just another employee in the crowd. The pain that shot through Elena's chest was physical. She needed to get out of there now. She pushed through the crowd, barely seeing where she was going. Her only thought to escape before she completely fell apart. She was almost at the door when a hand grabbed her arm. "Elena Marquez, right?" She turned and found an older man, graying hair, warm smile, expensive suit. "I'm Harold Grayson, board member. I've heard wonderful things about your work. Mr. Harrington personally mentioned how impressed he is with your contributions." The world spun. He mentioned her in front of the board. "Excuse me," she managed to say, pulling away and running for the exit. She rushed through the hallways until she found an empty bathroom, locked herself in a stall, and finally let the tears fall silent, hot, devastating. He lied for weeks while he touched her, kissed her, made love to her. Liam Harrington, CEO, billionaire. And she was just another stupid employee who had fallen for his lies. She didn't know how long she stayed there trying to pull herself together. But when she finally came out, the hallway was empty, silent, until she turned the corner and almost collided with him. Liam. He was leaning against the wall, still wearing that suit that made him look like a stranger. But his eyes were destroyed. "Elena," his voice was hoarse, broken. "No," she said, taking a step back when he tried to approach. "Don't you dare. Please, let me explain." "Explain what?" Her voice rose, years of pain and anger finally finding an outlet. "How you lied to me from day one. How you pretended to be someone else while we." Liam flinched, as if he'd been slapped. "It wasn't like that." "No? Then how was it, Liam? Or should I call you Mr. Harrington?" The tears were flowing freely now. But Elena didn't care. "You told me you were just Liam from IT when all along you were my boss." "I know." He took a step toward her, hands extended pleadingly. "I know, and I'm sorry. But you need to understand. I just wanted what? To have fun with the naive employee? To see how long it would take for me to find out the truth. No. God. No. Elena." His voice echoed through the empty hallway. "I wanted to be loved as an ordinary man, not as a CEO, not for my money or power, just for me. And by lying you think you achieved that?" Elena laughed, but it was a humorless sound. "You didn't give me the chance to truly love you, Liam. You created a fantasy and tricked me into living in it with you. Everything I told you about myself was true," he insisted, his voice desperate. "My feelings, my fears, everything I shared with you that was real. I was real when I was with you. But you never gave me the same chance," Elena shouted. "You never trusted me enough to tell me the truth, to let me decide if I wanted you knowing who you really were. Liam ran his hands through his hair, destroying the perfect styling, revealing for the first time the man beneath the CEO. I was afraid. Every time someone finds out who I am, they change. They see me as a title, a check, an opportunity. I couldn't bear it if you looked at me like that, so instead you preferred to lie to me. Elena's words were poison. You preferred to manipulate me? I love you. The words exploded from him, raw and desperate, echoing through the hallway. Liam's eyes were glistening. All his composure crumbled. I love you, Elena. For the first time in my life I really love someone, and I know I screwed everything up. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but please, his voice broke, please don't look at me like I'm a monster. Elena closed her eyes, tears still falling. Part of her wanted to run into his arms, wanted to believe that love was enough, but the betrayal cut too deep. You tell me you love me, she whispered, opening her eyes to face him, but love without trust is just an empty word, and you never trusted me. Elena, please. I need time, she said, hugging herself as if she could hold herself together. I need to think, to process. I can't do this right now. She walked past him, and Liam didn't try to stop her. But when she reached the elevator and looked back one last time, she saw him still in the same spot, leaning against the wall, his face in his hands, and for the first time, Elena wondered if they both hadn't gotten lost in those lies. The days following the party were the longest of Elena's life. She continued going to work because she needed the job, because she wasn't the type who ran from responsibilities. But every hour in the office was silent torture. She avoided the cafeteria at lunch, kept her eyes fixed on the screen, declined invitations for casual conversations, and completely ignored Liam's attempts to talk to her. He tried every way possible: formal emails asking for a meeting to clarify pending matters, text messages on her personal cell phone, which she didn't even know how he had gotten, ranging from desperate. Please, just listen to me. To simple, I'm thinking about you. Flowers appeared on her desk every morning, white lilies, her favorites, which she had only mentioned once. Elena threw them in the trash without reading the cards. It was a gray Tuesday, 2 weeks after the party, when everything changed again. Elena was working late, anything to avoid going back to an empty apartment where she only thought about him. The floor was practically deserted when she heard the elevator open. She didn't look up, probably security making rounds, but then she felt that familiar presence, that warmth, that woody scent that haunted her dreams. Elena. His voice was hoarse, tired, so different from the controlled tone of the CEO, or even the casual Liam she had known. She forced herself to look up, and what she saw shocked her. Liam looked like a rec suit, wrinkled, tie loose and crooked, deep circles under his eyes, hair disheveled as if he'd run his hands through it compulsively. What do you want? Elena asked, keeping her voice cold despite the tightness in her chest. Just 5 minutes, he pleaded, taking a cautious step toward her. Give me 5 minutes to talk, and if afterward you still want me to leave, I will forever. If that's what you want. Elena should have said no, should have sent him away immediately. But there was something about the way he looked, so broken, so vulnerable, that made her hesitate. 5 minutes, she agreed, crossing her arms defensively. Liam pulled a chair but kept a respectful distance, as if he feared any proximity would make her flee. I screwed everything up, he began, his voice raw. I know there's no excuse for what I did, but I need you to understand it wasn't about deceiving you. It was about protecting myself. Protecting yourself? Elena's voice had a sharp edge. From me? From everyone. Liam leaned forward, elbows on his knees, face in his hands. Do you have any idea what it's like to grow up rich? To have people around you who only want something from you? My mother married 4 times every time to men who wanted the family money. My father died when I was 12. And suddenly I was the heir. People changed around me. Friends weren't friends, they were opportunities. Elena remained silent, but something in her chest began to soften despite herself. I built Apex from scratch, he continued, worked day and night, sacrificed everything, and as the company grew, I became more invisible. People didn't see me anymore, they saw my bank account, my status, what I could do for them. He looked up, and there was so much pain in his eyes that Elena had to look away. Until you, I know, he interrupted softly. God, I know. That's why when you kissed me that day without knowing who I was, just because you felt something, Elena, it was the first time in years someone wanted me just for me, not for what I have, not for what I can offer, just me. The tears burned in Elena's eyes, but she blinked them away. Ipanikit, Liam admitted. When you got the job, I knew I should tell you the truth immediately, but I was selfish, cowardly. I wanted a few more days, a few more weeks of being normal, of being loved without all the complications. But you created far worse complications, Elena whispered. I know. And if I could go back, I'd do everything differently. I'd tell you the truth from the beginning. I'd give you the choice you deserved. He stood up but didn't approach. But I can't go back. All I can do is tell you the truth now. I love you. I love the way you bite your lip when you're concentrating. I love how you laugh with your whole body. I love your intelligence, your passion, the way you challenge me. And I love that you made me want to be better, more honest, more real. Liam, you don't have to say anything, he said quickly. I just needed you to know, and to also know that I'll respect whatever you decide. If you want me out of your life, I'm out. If you want to change departments or even work remotely so you don't have to see me, I'll make it all happen. Your career, your comfort, your happiness, they're more important than what I want. He started to walk away, and something inside Elena screamed to stop him. Before she could find the words, he stopped and turned one last time. Just one more thing. That weekend we spent together, it was the best of my life. Not because of the sex, though it was incredible, but because for the first time, I wasn't alone. I had someone who saw me, and even if it never happens again, I'll treasure that forever. Then he left, and Elena was alone with her confused thoughts and divided heart. It was Monday, almost 6 in the evening, when the rain began. Elena was leaving the building when she saw something that made her heart stop. Across the street, under the rain that was beginning to fall heavily, was Liam, no umbrella, no coat, just the suit that was completely soaked, and he was just standing there looking at the building at her. Elena ran across the street without thinking, the rain instantly soaking her clothes. "What are you doing?" she shouted over the sound of the rain. Liam looked at her, and there was so much pain, so much regret in his eyes that Elena felt her heart break. "Waiting," he said simply. "Waiting for what? You're going to get sick. I don't care." His voice was hoarse. "I come here every day just to see you leave, to make sure you're okay. Because even if I can't be with you, I need to know you exist, that you're alive and safe." "You're crazy," Elena said, but her voice was full of emotion. "Maybe," he admitted, a sad smile curving his lips, "but I love you, and I'd do it all again just to see you smile." And it was in that moment, with the rain falling on them like the day they met, that Elena realized something important. She loved him too. She loved the idiot who lied, the man so afraid of being rejected that he created a fantasy, the lonely CEO, and the caring Liam from IT. She loved all of him. And maybe, just maybe, love was about forgiving imperfections, about choosing someone despite their flaws. "Come on," she said, taking his hand so cold from the rain. "My apartment is close. You need to dry off and warm up." Liam looked at their intertwined hands as if he couldn't believe it was real. "Elena, and then we're going to talk," she continued, taking a deep breath. "Really talk this time. No lies, no masks, just the truth." His eyes filled with tears that mixed with the rain. You forgive me?" "Not yet," she said honestly, "but I want to try. If you promise to never lie to me again." "I promise," he said immediately. "I swear to you never again." And as they walked through the rain, hands intertwined, Elena knew the road ahead would be difficult, that rebuilding trust would take time, that there would be days when she'd doubt him, when the anger would return. But for the first time in weeks, she felt hope, because sometimes love isn't about perfection. It's about choosing to stay, even when it would be easier to leave. And Elena Marquez was choosing to stay. Elena's apartment in Brooklyn was small and cozy, a stark contrast to Liam's luxurious loft. A one-bedroom studio with an open kitchen decorated with plants she tried to keep alive, books piled on every available surface, and family photographs hanging on the walls. It was modest, but it was hers and it was real. Liam was shivering when they entered, soaked to the bone, his lips slightly blue from the cold. Elena immediately went to the bathroom, returning with soft towels and one of her oversized hoodies, the only thing she had that might fit him. "Take off those wet clothes," she ordered, tossing the towels to him. "I'm making tea." Liam obeyed in silence. When Elena returned from the kitchen with 2 steaming mugs of chamomile tea, she found him sitting on the sofa wearing her hoodie, which was tight on his broad shoulders but somehow made him look more human, more vulnerable, with a towel around his neck. Still trembling slightly, she handed him the tea and sat on the other end of the sofa, keeping distance not because she didn't want to touch him, but because she knew that if she touched him now, if she allowed physical attraction to speak louder, she would end up avoiding the conversation they needed to have. "Thank you," Liam said, his hands wrapping around the mug as if it were the most precious thing in the world. He took a sip and closed his eyes. I haven't had tea since my grandmother died. She always made it when I was sick. It was a small piece of truth, a fragment of his life he had never shared before. And Elena realized this was how it would have to be, one piece at a time, building trust brick by brick. Tell me about her, Elena asked softly. Your grandmother. Liam looked at her surprised, as if he hadn't expected her to want to know. Then slowly he began to speak. She was the only person who really saw me, he said, his voice low, nostalgic. After my father died and my mother started marrying those men, my grandmother was my anchor. She lived in a small house in Connecticut, and I'd run away there whenever I could. She taught me to cook, to take care of the garden, made me feel normal. When did she die? 3 years ago. Cancer. The pain in his voice was palpable. I was with her at the end. She held my hand and told me not to be afraid to love, said that locking my heart away out of fear of being hurt was worse than any pain love could cause. He laughed without humor. I spent the last 3 years proving she was wrong. Until you. Elena felt tears sting her eyes. She sounds like she was amazing. She was. You would have liked her, and she would have loved you. Liam put his mug on the coffee table and turned completely toward Elena. Can I ask you a question? Yes. Why did you bring me here? After everything I did, why didn't you send me away? Elena thought carefully before responding. Because when I saw you there soaked, destroyed, I realized something. You weren't there to manipulate me or to get something. You were there because you really care, and because... She paused, forcing herself to be honest. Because I still feel something for you. Even with all the anger, all the hurt. I can't just turn off what I feel. But you don't trust me, Liam said. And it wasn't a question. No, Elena admitted. Not yet, but I want to. I want to believe that the man I met, both Liam from IT and Liam Harrington, is real. I want to believe you won't lie to me again. Liam slid from the sofa to the floor, kneeling in front of her, not in a romantic position, but in surrender, in supplication. Then let me prove it, he said, his voice intense. Let me show you who I really am. No leash, no masks. It's going to hurt. It's going to be ugly sometimes. Because I have scars, Elena. I have traumas and fears and parts of me that aren't pretty, but they're real. And if you give me this chance, I'll show you everything. Elena held his face between her hands, forcing him to look into her eyes. Then start now. Tell me something real. Something you're scared to admit. Liam closed his eyes, and Elena felt the tremor pass through him. When he opened them again, there were tears there. I'm afraid of not being enough, he confessed, his voice breaking. That when you really know me, all of me, you'll realize I'm not worth it. That I'm just a rich guy who's emotionally screwed up and doesn't know how to love right because I never had an example of it. My mother never really loved me. She loved the idea of having an heir. And my father, he let out a bitter laugh. My father loved me. But he was always working, always building empires. And when he died, I realized I barely knew him, that he was a stranger who just happened to share DNA with me. Elena pulled him into her arms, and Liam fell apart. He buried his face in her shoulder while sobs shook his body, years of pain and loneliness, finally finding release. I'm sorry, he cried. I'm sorry for lying, for hurting you, for being such a damn coward that I couldn't trust you from the beginning. Shh, Elena murmured, stroking his hair, holding him while he broke apart. It's okay. You're here now. We're here. They stayed like that for a long time, her on the sofa, him kneeling on the floor, embracing as if they were the only thing keeping each other from getting completely lost. And in that embrace, something began to heal. Not completely, not instantly, but it began when Liam finally calmed down. He didn't pull away. He stayed there, his face still hidden in her shoulder, his breathing gradually normalizing. I've never cried like this in front of anyone, he admitted, his voice raw and vulnerable. Not even in therapy. You're in therapy? I started 3 years ago after my grandmother died, and I realized how broken I was, he said quietly. But I still have a lot of work to do. I still have to learn to trust, to open up, to not be afraid of being abandoned every time someone finds out who I really am. I'm not going to abandon you, Elena said. And as she spoke the words, she knew they were true. Not because you're perfect, nobody is, but because I'm choosing to stay, choosing to try, as long as you're honest with me from now on. I promise, Liam said solemnly. No more lies, no more masks, even when the truth is difficult or ugly, especially when it is. Okay. Elena took a deep breath. Then tell me the whole truth. Who is Liam Harrington? And he told her. They sat on the floor, backs against the sofa, and he talked for hours about growing up alone in a mansion full of staff but empty of love. About building Apex at 25 with inheritance money and pure stubbornness. About the early years sleeping in the office because working was easier than going home to silence. About the women who had dated him only for the money and how that had made him cynical and closed off. About the crushing loneliness of being at the top where no one can truly reach you. And then you got in that car, he said, a small, wondering smile finally appearing, all nervous and beautiful and completely real, and you kissed me without knowing who I was. And for the first time in years I felt hope. I felt it too, Elena admitted. I was terrified about the interview, but when you held me, when our eyes met, it was like the rest of the world disappeared. I still feel that way every time I see you. Elena took his hand, intertwining their fingers. So let's do this right this time. No rush, no secrets, just us really getting to know each other. Does this mean you forgive me? Elena thought carefully. It means I'm choosing to forgive you. But Liam, trust takes time to rebuild. There will be days when I'll doubt you, when the anger will come back, when I'll wonder if I made the right choice. I know, and it can't just be me opening up. I have my scars too, my fears. My father died making me promise I'd never let anyone make me feel small. And you, as much as it wasn't your intention when you lied to me, it felt like you were saying I wasn't strong enough to handle the truth. Liam squeezed her hand, pain crossing his face. God, I never... Elena, you're the strongest person I know. The way you fight, how you don't give up, how you keep standing even when the world pushes you down, it's one of the things that made me fall in love with you. Then promise you'll never underestimate my strength again, Elena said firmly. Promise that if something difficult comes up, you'll trust me to handle it for us to face it together. I promise, he said without hesitation. Always. No more masks. No more masks, she echoed. They kissed then, not with the desperate passion from before, but with something deeper. A kiss that was a promise, a commitment, a new beginning. When they pulled apart, Liam rested his forehead against hers. Can I stay? It doesn't have to be. Nothing has to happen. I just want to sleep next to you. Hold you. Wake up knowing you're here and this is real. Elena nodded. Stay. They lay down on her small bed, fully clothed, just holding each other, and for the first time in weeks, both slept deeply. No nightmares, no anxiety, just the peace of knowing they were exactly where they should be. When Elena woke the next morning with sunlight filtering through the curtains, Liam was already awake, watching her with those stormy blue eyes she now knew so well. Good morning, he whispered, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Good morning. She smiled a true, genuine smile. How are you feeling? Probably have a fever, he admitted with a hoarse laugh. Totally worth it. Elena put her hand on his forehead and grimaced. You're burning up. Stay in bed. I'll make coffee and get medicine. Elena. Yes. She leaned in and kissed his hot forehead. Thank you for not giving up on me. For giving me this second chance. She smiled softly. Thank you for finally trusting me with the truth. All of it. And as she took care of him that day, making soup, forcing him to take medicine, watching bad movies curled up in bed, Elena realized something important. Love wasn't about grand gestures or perfect moments. It was about choosing someone on the difficult days, on the ugly days, on the days when it would be easier to leave. And she was choosing Liam Harrington, not the CEO, not the billionaire, just the man with all his flaws, fears, and imperfections. And from the expression in his eyes every time he looked at her, she knew he was making the same choice, choosing her, choosing them, choosing love even when it was scary. And maybe, just maybe, that was the bravest thing either of them had ever done. 6 months had passed since that rainy night that changed everything. 6 months of rebuilding, learning, growing. It hadn't been easy. There were days when Elena still doubted, when the shadow of the initial lie haunted their conversations. But Liam kept his promise. Every time she asked something, he answered with brutal honesty. Every time she needed space, he gave it without question. Every time she needed reassurance, he offered it with infinite patience. And slowly, brick by brick, they built something new, something stronger than before, because it was founded on truth. Liam had publicly announced their relationship after 2 months, a joint decision that resulted in some inevitable office gossip, but which Elena faced head-on. She had proven her worth long before anyone knew she was with the CEO, and she would continue proving it every day. No one could take that away from her. Sophie had been shocked, of course. You're telling me that Liam from IT was actually Liam Harrington, the billionaire CEO? Surprise, Elena had laughed. I'm more impressed you didn't kill me for setting up that casual meeting at the building entrance. It turned out Sophie had no idea she really had just asked Liam, a longtime friend, to send a car. He was the one who had decided to go personally. Couples therapy also helped. Liam had suggested it after a month, admitting he wanted to make sure they were building a healthy foundation. The therapist, Dr. Ellison, helped them navigate the turbulent waters of rebuilding trust, establishing healthy boundaries, and communicating needs without fear. "You two are rare," she said in one session. "Most couples don't survive a breach of trust of this magnitude, but you choose every day to work on it. That's remarkable." And it was true. They chose every day. Liam had become more present not just in Elena's life, but in his own company. He started showing up more, interacting with employees, being less of a ghost and more of an accessible leader, and Elena saw how it transformed him. He smiled more, laughed more, seemed less burdened by the weight he'd carried alone for so many years. "You made me want to be better," he said one night, as they cooked together in his apartment, which now felt more like theirs, not just as a leader, but as a person. It was a spring Friday, exactly 6 months since the reconciliation when everything changed again. Liam had asked Elena to clear her schedule for Saturday. Something vague about a surprise. She was curious, but didn't suspect anything when he showed up at her door early in the morning with a beautiful dress in a garment bag. "What's this?" she asked, still in pajamas, hair messy from sleep. "Put it on," he said with a mysterious smile. "We have an appointment. Liam Harrington, if you're kidnapping me, just trust me." And she did. She put on the dress, a long teal silk that moved like water. Let Liam help with her hair, he had become surprisingly good at it, and followed him to the car. They drove out of the city, talking about everything and nothing, until Elena recognized the landscape. "Connecticut." "Where are we going?" she asked, curiosity finally winning. "You'll see." They stopped in front of a house, not large, not ostentatious, but charming and welcoming. Old brick walls covered in ivy, a front garden bursting with colorful flowers, and a faded blue door that somehow made the whole property look magical. "This was my grandmother's house," Liam said softly, turning off the engine. "After she died, I couldn't get rid of it. I'd come here sometimes when I needed to remember." Elena held his hand. "It's beautiful. Come on, there's something I want to show you." He guided her through the garden, impeccably maintained. Someone clearly kept it up to the backyard, and Elena was left breathless. The backyard had been transformed into something out of a fairy tale. Fairy lights hanging in the trees, rose petals creating a path to a small wooden gazebo decorated with white flowers, a tiny table set with candles and elegant plates, and the view from the top of a gentle hill. The distant Manhattan skyline shimmered like a memory. "Liam," he guided her to the gazebo, his hands trembling slightly. Nervousness, she realized. Liam Harrington, CEO of a billion-dollar company, was nervous. "I brought you here because this place means everything to me," he began, turning her to face him directly. "My grandmother raised me in this house during summers. She taught me that love isn't about grand gestures or money. It's about small moments, breakfasts together, hands held during bad movies. Someone who stays even when it's hard." Tears were already falling down Elena's face. "You taught me that too," Liam continued, his voice thick with emotion. "You taught me that being vulnerable isn't weakness, that true love isn't afraid of the truth, no matter how ugly it is, that it's worth fighting for what matters." Then, to Elena's complete shock, Liam knelt down. "Elena Marquez," he said, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. "I screwed everything up in the beginning. I lied to you when I should have trusted you, but you gave me something I never expected, to have a second chance. And every day since then I choose to love you, choose to honor you, choose to be honest, even when it's hard, choose to be the man you deserve." He opened the box, revealing a simple but stunning ring, an emerald surrounded by tiny diamonds. "This ring belonged to my grandmother. She told me to give it to someone who made me want to be better, someone who saw me, really saw me, and chose to stay anyway." Elena was sobbing now, hands covering her mouth. "I don't just want to work alongside you. I want to live with you, grow old with you, have children with you if you want, or just cats, or travel the world. Anything, as long as it's with you." He paused, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "Will you marry me, Elena? Let me love you for the rest of my life?" "Yes," she said without hesitation, pulling him up and kissing him through the tears. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." Liam slid the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, as if it had been made for her, and kissed her, as if it were the first and last time simultaneously, as if she were air and he was learning to breathe again. "I love you," he whispered against her lips. "I love you so much, it scares me." "I love you too," Elena replied, holding his face between her hands. It scares me sometimes too, but it's the good kind of fear, the kind that means something really matters. They stood there embracing in the gazebo as the sun began to set, painting the sky in pinks and oranges, and for the first time both felt complete peace. The following months passed in frantic but joyful preparation. Elena wanted something intimate, no ostentation. Just the people who really mattered. Liam agreed immediately, relieved not to have to make a big corporate spectacle. The ceremony took place 6 months later in a private garden in Manhattan, overlooking the skyline. Just 50 guests, close friends, some colleagues, and, to Liam's emotional surprise, his therapist, whom he now considered family. Elena wore a simple white lace dress, hair loose in natural waves, holding a bouquet of white lilies. Liam wore a light gray suit, no tie, looking more relaxed than anyone had ever seen him. Sophie was the maid of honor, obviously. When it was time for vows, there wasn't a dry eye in the garden. Elena went first, her voice firm despite the tears. Liam, when I met you, I was lost, scared, trying to prove my worth to the world. You saw me, really saw me, and made me realize I never needed to prove anything. You loved me on my worst days and celebrated with me on my best. I promise to love you, even on the days when love is hard. I promise to choose you, choose us every day. I promise to be your safe harbor, just as you are mine. Liam needed a moment to compose himself before speaking. Elena, I spent most of my life hiding behind masks, afraid of being seen, afraid of being rejected. You tore down all those masks and loved me anyway. I promise to never hide anything from you again. I promise to honor you not just as my wife but as my equal partner. I promise that when I fall, because I will fall, you'll be the first person I call, and I promise to love you not in spite of our imperfections, but because of them, because that's what makes us real. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Liam held Elena's face as if she were the most precious thing in the world, and kissed her under the applause and tears of their guests. The reception was intimate and joyful, no long speeches or excessive formalities. Just music, dancing, laughter, and love. But the most special moment came at the end of the night, when Liam took Elena to the edge of the garden, where they could see the entire city lit up. "Do you remember that day in the rain?" he asked, pulling her into his arms. "How could I forget? That's where it all began. I was so scared," he admitted, "because I knew you had just changed my entire life with one kiss. And you changed mine," Elena said, resting her head on his chest, listening to the steady beating of his heart. In all the best ways, they stood there, 2 hearts beating as one, while the city that had brought them together glowed in the background. And in that moment, both knew that all the pain, all the struggle, all the difficult journey had been worth it, because they had found something rare, something real, something eternal. They had found true love, the kind that survives lies and truths, storms and calms, falls and rises. And as Liam spun Elena under the stars, both smiling like children, one thing was clear. This was just the beginning of a life built on honesty, vulnerability, and daily choice. A life where 2 wounded hearts found healing in each other. A life where love wasn't perfect, but it was real. And real, they discovered, was infinitely better than any fantasy, because sometimes the best love stories are the ones that almost didn't happen, the ones that had to be fought for, earned, rebuilt from scratch. And Elena Marquez and Liam Harrington had fought for every inch of their love, and now finally they could live in it forever. Sometimes love doesn't arrive wrapped in perfection. It arrives disguised with scars, carrying fears built over an entire lifetime. Elena and Liam discovered that true love isn't about never falling. It's about choosing to get up together, even when it would be easier to give up. It's about tearing off the masks and showing the ugly parts, trusting that the other person will stay. They learned that trust isn't restored overnight. It's rebuilt brick by brick, truth by truth, until one day you look back and realize you've built something indestructible. In the end, maybe the truest love is the one that survives its own breaking, because only something truly strong can shatter and still find the strength to put itself back together, more beautiful than before.